Jesus. Oh. Oh, Poggers. Oh, welcome.
Hey.
Welcome to another episode of the POG State. I'm Atlus, joined by Valdes, Chronicler, and Wolf. And Sehebok Maneba Duzeo. This is, of course, our Lunar New Year attire in our humbox, looking glorious. You may have watched the LCK last Sunday, and that's exactly the time that it is now. These are the gentlemen that got the huge sleeves.
Careful with
Yeah,
that cup.
that is a very good point. That is a very good point. But welcome. We've just been playing a game of Ute, which I'm not very good at.
Ute.
Valdes actually is very, very good,
lead.
so I'm pretty happy that
Over
we're
there now.
not play. Yeah, I think he got yeeted whilst he was uting.
I lost my turn.
I think that's how it goes. But anyway, welcome to the show. We've got a lot of stuff to go over here, as we have already had 1 week of the LCK in the books. A lot of learnings have taken place, and first of all, I just want to get your thoughts. How are your feelings about the first week of the LCK? Any standout moments, Valdes?
Standout moments, I think D+ are really good. T1, we expected them to be good, but really the biggest thing that stood out to me was that D+, not only are they a good team, but also they're like incredibly good, so kind of a basic thing. Other than that, just pretty standard week 1 stuff, like a lot of wishy-washy drafts, like everybody doing the same thing, or people seemingly just like not prepared, a little bit rusty, stuff like that. So it's kind of what you would expect from week 1 for me.
Definitely still week 1 of spring. To me, there is very clearly, besides T1 and maybe Genji, and obviously D+ as well as was saying, a lot of teams just don't really have an identity yet, and I think that's also, the meta right now is really still. So between a very still meta, as well as teams still figuring out how they work, we actually see a lot of like pretty subpar league. I think it's normal for the SK as well. I think if we go back last spring, it was also like, what is happening? And then summer is really where it turned on. We had a couple of roster switches, and I think that is, after this first week, something I'm expecting as well.
I just want to echo Chronicler's thoughts about the meta being a little bit stale, just a little bit, but I think that interestingly it's stale in terms of how the bottom matchups are played out. Yes, the jungle often ends up being Sejuani and Maokai and Wukong. That's it. Like there's basically 3 jungles that you can pick right now. But at the same time, I think that we've seen a lot of different experimentations on the top side of the map. Top is completely different than it was before. We're seeing a lot more split pushing, a lot more bruisers. We're seeing some attempts to do stuff like Ashe Forest. We've seen support Jhin. So there are some rare hidden picks that have kind of popped up. And they're like, oh, that was kind of exciting for a second. Oh, we played Zac yesterday. Like that was cool. But yeah, mostly it's not. But like there has been like, well, there has been a few exciting moments, shall we say? And so I've looked forward to those as much as I look forward to 13.2.
Yes, I'm also very much looking forward to, please God, change the If I see another Zeri Lulu picked into anything, I'm going to be extraordinarily upset. And that's probably what's going to happen this afternoon. If you guys are watching this right when it comes out, I guess that could be happening in a few hours' time. So, yay for us. Thankfully, for the first time, here we are actually able to talk about the week as a whole, because of course Sunday is starting a little bit earlier. It means that we can actually get the POG State to you after the entire week has concluded, and therefore nothing left up in the air. We have all the information. And today, if we were doing it before Sunday's games, then we might be saying some very different things to what we might be saying now. But let's get into our first little segment here, which is Overreactions. Cue Overreactions big sign under here, just flashing or something, right?
Big as the sleeve.
Yeah, on the
Sleeves
sleeve.
are even bigger than
Yeah.
We're just right overreaction.
Overreaction sleeves! Perfect. There we go. I love it. They are so sick.
You look like you're about to fly.
We actually made the joke on the mask as well.
He actually flew off the caster desk.
Shall I go first?
Bring us your overreaction sleeve, man.
Yeah, well, prior to the day, I was going to go with, all challenger players suck, but we can't do that anymore, because actually, pretty surprising. Let's go with D+ T1 are going to win Worlds. It's a
Both of them at
But
the
they
same
can
time?
both win worlds.
No.
They'll draw
Sorry,
in the fifth game.
that'll be the final. Yeah, that'll be the final.
Really
Calling it
predicting
out.
a team merger mid-season? You know, between
No,
who's going to take the final slot?
No,
Like,
I'm overreacting. I'm not crazy. I'm not gonna call it like they. I'm not gonna call it after two series. But that to me, it feels like Genji T1 last summer or Genji T1 last spring or Damwon T1. You can see the theme here. That would be my main thing. Second one, like I said, would be all challengers suck and challengers is cancelled. But actually, I think individually they look way better, so I don't have any overreactions in that regard.
Yeah, you know when you have that creeping fear or suspicion that
I
like
had that
something that you thought could be worst case scenario, but it's probably not going to happen. But you're like, it could be. Sometimes it keeps you up at night, but most nights you sleep well. But every now and then you had too much coffee, and you're like, oh my God, is Hanwha Life Esports going to suck this season? and you're in your bed and you're just up at night thinking about it, and you're like, all I wanted was Viper to come back. That's why I told everybody. I just told everybody I want Viper to come back to the LCK. That's the one thing I want in the off season, and I got it. But I just don't know if they're going to be good.
Like this.
And you know, so far, Clit hasn't been living up to expectations. We've seen some poor macro. Hey, look, I had higher expectations for Clid. Volibear's not meta right now, I know, but we're still looking at a player who has done great things in the past and isn't delivering right now. My overreaction is like, is Hanwha Life Esports going to make playoffs? Maybe in one of the bottom two spots. Like that's where I'm worried right now.
Yeah. I got a couple. I think
Lay it on us, Valdes.
super teams are dead. Super teams are dead. You can call D Plus a super team, but I mean it's kind of basically the same team. They added some good pieces.
That's called D plus deft. That's
pretty much, yeah. It's like they added deft, and it's like, whoa, what happened? But like, I'm talking specifically about Hanwha Life Esports, which and KT. I think these teams, I was really worried coming into spring, and my overreaction, because it is week 1 of spring, is that I think they are kind of dead on arrival. And I'm worried because, it's week 1, but what's going to happen? Can they get their stuff together before week 5 or week 6? We only have 9 weeks, so can they get it together? Overreaction is Giga Chad. Bro is going to make playoffs again. Hey! Which, that might not be too crazy, but I think they've got a good chance.
All right, my overreaction
It's an overreaction.
Live Sandbox is the worst team we've ever seen in the LCK since Kongdu Monster. I think they look absolutely
But they won
terrible.
today.
And that brings me to agreeing with your point about super teams sucking ass. Because Hanwha Life Esports should have absolutely won. And they got bopped by Live Sandbox, who I thought were embarrassingly bad against D plus Kia. Embarrassingly bad.
That's true.
It was the
just-
worst. It was possibly the worst games I've watched since I became a commentator.
Yeah, it's the worst game I've cast.
And just because they beat Hanwha Life Esports on Sunday does not take away from the fact that those games existed. And so I think they're still bad.
But does it mean D Plus is just really, 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 really good?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, but also...
I know it's your overreaction, but there's no way they're worse than like 2021 DRX. I just don't see it.
2021?
DRX was like a 7th place team, right?
In summer, they were they were the 10th place team, and
Whenever
and
it was
everyone
where they didn't win
it was 2021
a series.
summer, yeah.
Wait,
they
that
were-
happened?
Yeah, they went.
That
Yeah,
recently?
yeah, they went from 10th
World
place.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
King
no,
and King and like that's but I'm hitching along with the super team suck. That's my jam.
Yeah.
That's my overreaction.
I do want to temper the KT point, though, because that is not a super team. That is a whole bunch of players.
What? Keen, BDD?
Yeah.
Did you see how many LCK games they had more than Live Sandbox? Or more than Nomeshim, rather?
How many big names on one team?
A super team
Are
is
there?
putting successful players together on a team.
BDD made
BDD,
world semis.
He made world semis, but not last year. Last year, he was bad.
Keen
was also
bad, yeah.
bad. Cuz, bad. You know,
Mostly bad, mostly bad.
really good, but he was already on the team,
You know
so you
what?
can't include that. Life was life.
You know what KT is? KT is that we're getting back together for one last job. Like, I don't know if it's a cop movie or a heist movie.
Sorry, not life.
But it's one of those two where it's like we're getting the gang back together and we're gonna win this. But I don't think they're gonna win. I think they suck.
all the old cool artists, they come together for one jam session. It's like, oh no, like this should have never happened.
It's like
you know?
it's like a 45-year-old man playing like pop punk, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is
exactly.
why sitcoms usually don't do reunion episodes.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like Sum 41. They're coming to Korea this year.
Oh, you serious?
Yeah.
I would watch that.
I mean, you would, but you
I
know.
was super into that when I was 18.
It's
Same.
like KT, you know. It's like all these great names. They had such illustrious careers, you know.
Yeah.
I'm worried. It's an overreaction.
Budget super team.
I like it, yeah.
I think it's a budget super team. Like
I think,
it's got a lot of
KT
talent.
got them when the stock was low. You know,
But
like
I-
they invested at the bottom.
The thing that makes me sad about the KT thing, and Humble Life suffers from this a little bit as well, is that the best mixes that we've seen, actually, I think, is also what is going to be a very winning formula throughout the rest of the split. Is you get some experienced players and then some up and coming talent. That's literally what KT did last year, and it almost got them to Worlds with Vikla. And then they shipped off Vikla, and they're like, "Get over here, BDD, come back." Which, yeah, I don't. I'm still mad about.
Yeah.
I
They're a snowflower away from a losing formula with that one, I think. Yeah, I think that for me,
That
like,
did happen. There's been a lot of things I deleted from my memory for the last 2 years.
no wonder Wolf's been having these good night's sleep recently.
You remember Johan?
Hey, that was not Snowflower level.
It wasn't quite
Any
the
flawless enjoyers?
Hey.
same. Oh wow, that was a
That
was a
happened as well,
heartbreaking
yeah.
debut, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's been a little bit rough as far as the middle of the pack, but I think it's mainly for me the super team thing. I just never want to say the word again. Can we have an agreement now that we're for the rest of the season
said it
just
so
not
much.
good? I know I said it so much,
You have to
mainly
tell LCK
because I
first.
hate it so much that I just I'm
can't
riding
let it
this.
go.
Yeah. I was like, it's happening. This super team's not working, much like 2017 KT, 2019 SKT, any super team that's ever been built ever.
I don't know.
And it just doesn't work.
I think Humble Life is one lucid pickup away from winning the LCK. So just get that done.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Holy crap, yeah, they would. Lucid's so good. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay, but
It's not happening.
first, we've also introduced a new thing here in the LCK as well, which is the Saturday Showdown. Super sick. We get an extra pre-show. We get to talk about some banger matches that are coming through. We might be experimenting with other cool stuff depending on what happens throughout the season. But really, really cool opportunity to go over our next one, which is T1 versus DK. So the negativity, we can slide that over to the side. I'm sorry for, riding that one like a dead horse for the last little while. But now we get to talk about the teams that are good. And I think D plus Kia is surprisingly better than I expected straight out of the gate with no real need for that much adjustment. It's pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
I think the biggest surprise for that is Kana, right? Because Def's coming off of like his best form ever, right? He's in the intro, he's the moon, right? Like, okay, that's not relevant, but it is really cool.
I love it. I'm
Because he's the moon, that's why he's playing at this level. No, if they had just put Henna up there, man, who knows what could happen? No,
God.
so Def played really well at Worlds, right? So he had a big ramp up throughout all of 2022. Like even in the middle of the year, like at the end of spring, we were like, man, like DRX looks shaky, but Def doesn't. Like he looks good, right? He had a great year. He's back. You trust Canyon and Showmaker always, right? And so the real question was Kana, who is really just basically playing Gnar, and that's fine, but he looks really good. And we talked to the coaching staff a little bit at D plus Kia, and they were like, yeah, Kana seemed a little bit nervous in scrims, and he wasn't gelling with the team right away, and we just told him, like, just be aggressive, just go in, look for opportunities, and it absolutely shows in his play, right? Because he's looking for those opportunities, he's finding big ones on the Gnar, and small sample size so far, and the opponents that they played were fairly weak, right, in terms of the grand scheme of things, but when we get to the showdown coming up, like, I think we're going to learn a lot more, and I do think that right now, like, for me, D plus Kia looks like they could win this season, and actually, I originally predicted T1 would do it, and now I'm like, I don't know, this team looks this good before they even get to the peak of their synergy, right? And that's what's so scary about D plus Kia right now.
All right, naughty boys. Who's gonna take it?
It's a sleeve stare down to add to the Saturday showdown. Overreactions. I am kind of on board. I do think I do want to talk a little bit about Wolf that as well. I want to adjust my expectations for D plus still a little bit, or like hold off on them, because even though they look really good, they also are a team that like has been notorious in the past for being really good when they're better than their opponent, right? And really playing that kind of slow choke-out style that they did to my immeasurable pain in the Live Sandbox game. And for me, even if they end up losing against T1, the main thing to me is actually how Kana is going to do there, because I have complete faith in the rest of the team to at least, even if they like oscillate a bit, which right now they look really good, but when they face more tougher opponents that could kind of slope down, wouldn't really matter. I'd still expect them to be like a team already, I can say, that would make a deep run in playoffs. But in terms of top lane, I feel like the LCK as a whole is kind of in a weird place where Keen today had a really good day, but also KT as a whole did definitely not, you know, but like Keen individually looked good. But overall, it's just Zeus, and that's kind of it. And then other top laners have their moments, but so to me that is going to be going into that Saturday show, and like that's where I am happy to declare if it actually works and Kana holds his own, doesn't need to win, but just not int and not need resources. Then I think D+ Kia is going to be one of the 2 representatives that we send to MSI, because we have 2 now, which is great.
Oh, true.
Yeah, I think D+ will definitely benefit from the fact that top lane doesn't matter at all. So top lane, whatever. I feel like mid lane, kind of like whatever little top lane had, it kind of like went straight into mid lane. And mid lane is like, especially in this meta where we're seeing a lot of like split pushing potential mid laner champions like Akali, Sylas, I don't know, you name it. Basically anything that can kind of get in the side lane and be really hard to deal with if they get ahead. We saw what happened today with, I think it was Zeka.
Yeah.
And also in BDD as well.
Even,
yeah, and it happened in Closer as well. It's like once you get ahead, it's like, oh crap, this mid laner's like, what are you gonna do, right? Yeah. It's like the early game is all about the bottom lane. You try to get them ahead. And then the mid lane is kind of like, okay, if you get like a kill or slightly ahead, you can do crazy stuff when it comes to like the mid to late game. So because of that, I feel like, you know, the top lane is whatever. I think Kana will be fine against Zeus. I'm worried about, you know, how much impact Zeus is going to have. He's always going to have some impact because he's Zeus, but like mid lane, can Faker deal with Showmaker? Probably. I think that should be a pretty even matchup. Bottom lane though, I don't know. Like, can Deft overcome both Gumusi and Keria when he's got Kellen next to him? Not 100% sure. I think going into this one, I would have to predict T1 because, first of all, they're not a new team, you know, like it's how far can they go? Will they make it to Worlds again with the same roster? They're so incredible. They already made it to World Finals. I'm kind of expecting them to take it just because they're firing on all cylinders already.
And I also think that after them looking like they were having so much fun, even after losing game 1 against KT, they're like, ha ha ha, just having a good time, who really cares? And then crushed them in like absolutely incredible form, especially towards the end of that series, and with how well Faker is playing. So that was my point as well, was about the mid lane being really important. If Faker's gonna play like that, then like that's a next level up. Like his Lissandra that was the best Lissandra game I've ever seen played. And that champion's been played a billion times.
I agree, but it was also against Live Sandbox.
Oh, is that the Live Sandbox series?
Yeah. That was Envy getting...
Yeah, Faker was angry he didn't get POG.
No, that was against...
Sorry, it was against Pays and Delight.
Yes.
Never mind.
Yeah, that was against Genji.
Yeah, my bad.
Yeah. So that one...
That was actually relevant. Yeah.
Pretty
That one
relevant.
counts.
Yeah, and that was how he played against Chovy, which... You know, we generally put Chovy ahead of Showmaker as far as our tier lists on mid laners are concerned. So I think that Faker playing like that, certainly a big deal. But I think that, like, for the first matchup, D+ Kia versus T1, I think it should be like 70-30 T1 favored.
I agree.
And then I think over the year, we might see D+ sort of get closer and closer.
When Thanatos gets something,
We have been joking about this just a little bit, that
I
Thanatos
think-
might get called up if Kenna has some struggles.
I will probably predict D plus Kia, and that sounds crazy considering the caliber of opponents T1 beat versus what D plus Kia beat. But I think that D plus Kia right now, their knowledge of the meta seems extremely clean, and we're still going to be on 13.1. And they were like ahead of the curve. Their org, including their challengers team, picking Elise before anyone else, right? They're willing to play Elise in and still make those dives work. So I feel like their flexibility in draft is going to give them a pretty huge edge. Now, T1 played basically the same comps game to game, with the exception of that really cool Lissandra pick that came through. So that doesn't mean that they don't have more in the tank, but will they be able to show it is the question. And I feel like the laser-focused read that Dom1 has, or rather formerly Dom1 D Plus has, and how suffocating their playstyle is, how good their macro was, how well Kana was even sidelining from behind. I want to predict them, and like it might backfire. Like we might actually get the first real test for D Plus, and we're like, oh, never mind. Like T1 is the best team, but I kind of want to trust right now that they can actually win this first best of 3.
I'd be super hype if it was a split prediction. Super, because like I kind
Who
of
else is going
expected
for
it.
D+?
Yeah, who else is going? I'll do it.
Sure.
I guess Atlus is going to have to do it.
All right, that's my deft fandom. I'm putting it on the line.
You've made.
I don't know
A lot
whether
of
like
deft predictions.
because I was on the fence, and I felt like the only thing pushing me towards T1 was the fact that they're still the same, right? And we know that they're really good, and Spring is kind of something that they have been undefeated in before in previous years. So, and by that I mean last year, same roster.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you can really notice as well that it's really hard to make any argument because we have so little information.
Oh yeah, that's
It's-
the best
it's like-
part.
well, it's
that's
re-
why
it's
the
really fun.
overreactions are so much fun.
Yeah, no, but I think it's really fun because you really have to kind of guesstimate like where is the team's developmental curve going to go. I do agree that the beauty for D Plus is that their floor is already clearly very high, but their ceiling hasn't really been set. And with T1, you know, well, their ceiling is World Finals, which is about as good as it gets. But we know that everyone, or at least a large part of the team of D Plus, also has that capability. So I think it just, if we actually get, like, especially with how well both Deft and Faker are playing, those two teams jostling for first for a year, like, holy cow. That's so cool, because it was already cool at Worlds, and then Deft won, which is still like, I still don't fully understand. So yeah, that Saturday showdown is going to be amazing, because we also kind of glossed over the fact that the previous one was unfortunately a little overwhelming, because we didn't really know how good DRX was going to be, and they were not great. So.
Yeah, I mean, Genji as well. LCK champs versus world champs. Seems on paper like a pretty good first Saturday show.
Oh no, I mean, you never know.
Instead, LCK champs against Barrel, flashing at level 2,
Yeah.
and it didn't go well.
Which is also, that's peak Barrel, right? He did it last year as well.
The flash int strategy sometimes works. Just unfortunately did not work in that particular game. So now we've got a couple of things that we can go over as well about the Challenger League and how we think the Challenger boys have gone. Now, Chronicler, you're going to go last.
Yeah.
You've already stipulated, because of course we can now talk about our experience with a lot of these new players and what we think of them. I think the entirety of Nongshim is one that we want to talk about. Bulldog we definitely want to talk about, and Pays we want to talk about mainly. So I guess I'll start with Pays. Pays had a really rough beginning going up against T1 for their very first one. Wolf, how did you think that he played outside of that, as well as during that series?
I think that obviously it was a really tough matchup for him, and he looked a little bit nervous, but I think it was also a product of the Zeri not doing very well in the early parts of the week especially. We started to see it creep back up to a little bit more strength at the end of the week, but it's a tough matchup, tough opponents, right? And one of the best solution lanes that you're ever going to face in the world, period. So hard to really blame him. I think some of the fundamentals we saw from him in team fights in that series regardless, even from behind, and then the follow-up series they played later on Saturday, were really good. And I could definitely see some of the hype, right? Like some of the stuff that Chronicler's been telling us, some of the stuff we've watched on Chronicler's stream for Challengers last year. In terms of team fighting, positioning, and movement, looks pretty fantastic. So I think, considering he played well in the subsequent series, I have a lot of faith that he will, I don't want to say live up to Ruler necessarily in this first season, but I think like is a good investment for this roster in terms of what they're going to do in the coming months. And I also feel like Gen G as a whole suffered more because of their own rustiness and their own map movements more than he specifically suffered as a player individually, because Chovy didn't look his best either, right? And we did see some issues from Doran on the top side. So
Pina as well.
I hope people don't point fingers at Pace, because it's really not his issue. I think overall the reason why Gen G lost that series.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Valdes.
Chronicler's giving me that look. I'm like, okay, yes, it's my turn.
I'm giving you the look.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about just Pays, I think
We can branch out.
starting off
We'll
with
look if you want.
Pays, I think he is actually a really strong player. I think, one series isn't going to tell a story. It's still very early. And he had no McHale's or Cleanse against Faker's Lissandra, so that's not fair. So I think, give him some time. Well, he could have decided to take Cleanse and then maybe lose in the Lucian match. But it's like this whole thing.
Yeah.
I think maybe support should have gone for McHale's, but it's hard to go that first. There's a lot of things, and it's not all on Pays, like Wolf was saying, So the guy's really good. I think he has a ton of mechanical skill. I think he showed some of that off in their second series. Give him some time. I think he'll get up to the upper echelons of 80 carries. Just needs a little bit of time, which is kind of what spring is for. And speaking of that, CV Max has declared all of spring a scrim for his team, which is an interesting strategy. But also has a lot of challenger players on his roster that I think overall have been kind of playing pretty well.
I really have enjoyed Bulldog's play.
Bulldog is definitely, of the challenger players that we've seen so far, the one that's most exciting to me because he's laned so extremely well. Like Pays was hyped like crazy, right? And we're like, okay, this guy could be the next big guy, right? And Bulldog was pretty hyped by Chronicler as well, but he's on a rockier team overall. We're like not sure how Kwangdong's going to look in general, but actually But he comes into Kwangdong's roster, which we're also not sure about, right? And he seems to be the most consistent part of the roster so far. He's made some small mistakes, but I think overall his laning in particular has looked amazing. And some of the mechanics you learn when you're laning against top players are harder to actually finesse and get when you're that young, because sometimes it takes years to learn like every matchup. Some of the stuff where he's positioning wrong or making a bad rotation or a weird teleport, like some of that stuff is really easy to fix in terms of coaching. I think if the team gets behind like these sort of small changes that he could to make in his play, it's not about a knowledge problem for him. I think his knowledge of matchups is so far insanely good. Just fix some of those positional errors and he could be one of the best mid laners this season.
I think his Victor is probably the best that I've seen for a really long time. Like, I haven't, because we've seen Victors, right? But I haven't seen a Victor actually dominate the way his did in that game.
You all know how much I hate Victor, and I was like, we're going to do a Victor segment. We're gonna we're gonna justify the because it was that impressive. Like the amount, particularly considering that Karis had just gotten MVP for completely running over the entirety of Kwangdong.
He also got Challenger MVP the year before Bulldog came into the league as well, which is so cute.
Yeah, and I thought that says a very clear sign. It's like if Valdes does a Yumi is amazing segment, It'd be the same.
Or Stopwatch is the best.
Yeah.
I'm okay with Yumi.
No, okay, Stopwatch maybe.
Blast cones are amazing.
There you go.
Yeah,
Okay, there you go. Valdes talking about
wow, they created all this great gameplay. Yeah, I would never do that.
Well, that's what I did.
Yeah.
Thanks to Bulldog.
Yeah, no, his Victor was absolutely outstanding.
Am I holding all my opinions until the end and just go over everyone?
No, I think it's okay. We just need to address Nongshim now, as they just unfortunately lost to KT in their last match. But I actually think that we saw a lot more from Nongshim in their second series than their first. I think the first was a lot of nerves. I think that it was largely a wash and was not very clean, but I think what we saw in the KT series was the Nongshim that we should expect for the next few weeks at least, right? Nongshim playing to, their form that they were at in Challenger in 2022. And I just want to say, Sylvie's super good. That guy is great. Big fan. Valdes?
I thought, no?
I'm waiting.
He's waiting. He's at the end.
Until the end. I'm not allowed to speak.
Yeah,
If I speak, I'm in big trouble.
Yeah.
Sylvie's really good. I think that team has other issues, as we kind of did see. But just showing the fact that he could in their second series, kind of just get really aggressive on a meta pick like Wukong, and even that moment where he was like invading the jungle and like taking out the support 1v2, like that kind of stuff is a really good sign. So like you're saying, you know, these are all challenger players. They just got called up. There's a lot of pressure on them, but for someone to kind of take the burden of that early game, because I said earlier that it's all about the bottom lane in the early game, but it's also on the jungler to get the bottom lane ahead. So what they do is also, in turn, extremely important. And I think he kind of carried that game single-handedly. Let's not talk about media. I definitely do not want to talk about media.
Oh no, I laughed so much that I dropped my microphone.
Yeah. Let's not talk about media because Sylvie was the only carry of that game. And yeah, he's great. I think he's
I love your
a great talent.
aggressive comments towards the end.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Nongshim are very clearly a momentum-based team, right? You start a series off with a plan for game one. You know your side selection going into it. You've got a good draft prepared, and then you go according to plan. Game one, you're in a good mood. You get ahead. Sylvie's playing well, and everyone's like firing on all cylinders, hitting all the skill shots. All the mechanics are online, right? Game two doesn't go according to plan. Things start to fall apart a little bit. Then game three, like we're flexing, like we're freestyling, like yeah, blind casting, let's go. Like, you know, it was definitely, I felt like the kind of thing that could happen to a full roster of people who don't have veteran, or a team that doesn't have any veteran on it, because usually you have somebody at the helm of the roster that, you know, isn't just newly promoted to say like, all right guys, we lost this game, but like we can still draft well here. We can.
He's played in the LCK.
That's true.
I mean, Peter has played in the LCK. Like we had,
Peter, yeah.
I mean, but no real veteran, right, who can stand up and say like, all right guys, like calm down. It's going to be okay. Like we just focus. Like just don't die mid again, please, Fiesta. Like we can do this, and like kind of keep everybody calm and like stick to the plan, kind of thing. It felt like they really went off the rails, and some of the itemization we saw in that game too was bizarre. And I think if somebody's like buy this or like survive and do this, like there's a way those games look different, but seemed very momentum based to me.
All right, Chronicler, it's your time. How did you feel about your boys?
So now I'm just going to talk for like 10. No, I don't. So to me, because I obviously have seen a lot more of because after this season it won't be the case anymore, because we'll be seeing just as much challengers as one another. But to me, Pace was the big one, because Pace was also on a pretty crappy team, and you saw that the moment that Gen.G went to playoffs, they just got bopped because they just can't bot with like 4 people for 3 games, and then they just kind of got run over in Challenger. Yeah. So I actually am. I really like the assessment of Wolf. I think that Pace's team fighting has really been what has set him apart as like the best AD carry in terms of like 1v9 potential. But laning against actual good players, and in case of Gumacaria, probably one of the top 3 bot lanes in the world, like very, very easily can make that claim. Was really tough. I actually was very happy to see his second series. I think also in game number 1 against T1, he was actually playing well. In game 2, he was very clearly going full rookie and really tilted. Do also agree with the McKill's assessment. Because we really have seen that Zeri's either go cleanse or barrier, or they get kind of boomed in lane into the Lucian Nami. So it's more of a team problem. I also think his interviews are hilariously bad, which I just love. That's
I was going to mention this, and I was I forgot about it. But it's he needs some media training for sure.
No. I hope they don't. I think it's hilarious because it really is. I think Bay's a great player. I think he's showcasing that, as you point out, if you invest time in it, it will pay off. Bulldog was the surprising one to me, because I was not expecting him to immediately pop off, and within challengers, Kwangdong has also just kind of sucked, because they had exactly 2 players, which was Ilima, who's still there, and then Bulldog. And now the team really sucks in challengers because they don't have Bulldog anymore. So they lost one of their like only 2 win conditions. And Bulldog's fundamentals were, I think, one of the best in the league. The only one that could match was Poolbay, and Poolbay I think his highs are a little bit higher. Really reminds me of Baby Showmaker in many ways in that regard. But Bulldog is just like very solid. He's not really and in challengers at least. So seeing him do that as well, and champions like Victor that are really boring, and I don't like.
Raid boss on that Victor.
Yeah, but also the confidence with which he played, like stepping up, actually recognizing I am the damage dealer, I think is really impressive for a player that young. Yeah. And as a whole, Kwangdong really surprised me. Even though I don't know why they subbed out June, because June is great. that part didn't get, but it's
Sometimes
CV Max, yeah. And then Nongshim, I just want people to like the team because they're very lovable. I don't think they should be good in the LCK. I think Sylvie and Vital specifically look like the standouts on the team. They should be. That's what they were within Challengers. And as long as those two players have a great future ahead of them and Dundun can become, I don't know, he can just become the mascot or something. Just one. That team is like the Freded Brion/Brion of Challengers. So I'm happy to have them in the league, but I think it's also good that KT beat them today, because KT should in no world lose against players that very clearly the moment they fall behind have no clue what to do.
And they almost did.
One thing I want to say before we get off the Challengers topic is, in the past, the last 2 years we've had, the Challengers call up, send down system and stuff like that. Like, we didn't see it utilized very much, and then rules have just constantly, like, every single year made it like easier and easier and easier, and we still don't see it utilized that much. But I think with the current like team economy, with what teams are willing to spend and what teams were not willing to spend, like for example, we had a team of 5 world champions who split into all different directions, not as big as Rocks Tigers, but similarly, right, where you have Barrow only left, and we have these budget. I can't say budget; it turns the lights off. These budget super teams like KT we're talking about, where there's a lot of old veterans who just haven't quite made it yet. I think a lot of Challengers players have seen this opportunity this year to be like, all right, there's going to be some holes. There's going to be some spots. Like Teddy didn't make it on a team this year. Like, think about that for a second.
Dread isn't on a team.
Dread's not on a team. Like, so when you think about these opportunities, I feel like it's the best time ever to be a Challengers player is trying to compete and get onto one of these teams, because we don't have relegation, right? We don't have any way for these rosters except Nongshim in this weird scenario to like come in as a whole. So you really have to prove yourself right now. And I think a lot of these players look hungry. They look motivated. It feels very different than previous years for Challengers. I think right now is the most important time for people to be paying attention to the talent in Challengers, because I do think a lot of retirings are going to happen. We're going to see a huge gap that needs to be filled, perhaps in summer and beyond, going into 2024. So huge year for the Challengers system in general right now, in my opinion.
No, I 100% agree. I think that it's really cool that we've at least, we've now got the global broadcast, and we can actually have a bit more of a look at it. Indirect shout out to that one as well, but I do agree with you.
Direct.
I mean, yeah. Yeah.
It's right on the nose,
Direct,
actually.
yeah.
We have an English broadcast of the
Watch
Challengers.
P.S. Also, Challenger, very important now.
It's on Mondays and Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Yeah, even in terms of exports, right? The power level of Challengers is very indicative also of how the future of the LCK is going to look. So seeing players that are really good in Challengers, like Bulldog, like Pace, actually perform, even though there are a lot of caveats because they're very inexperienced, I think is really important. Just as I think it's important that Nongshim isn't actually a good team, because obviously like they shouldn't be in terms of experience and macro. But this even goes to other leagues. I think that it is very obvious that the level at Challengers is higher than in a lot of world qualifying regions, right? Because
I mean, Lucid and Pool Bay should be offered.
well,
hundreds
I
of
mean,
thousands
why
of
do you
dollars
why do you think those 3 players are still on like Dummon's not stupid? D Plus knows what they have, and that team would be one of the teams that will come up 100%. But like even people like Photon was good, like really good in the context of Challengers, was one of the best tops there. But I'm pretty sure, based on my assessment of him and what we've seen of the LEC, for example, globally, that he's just going to dunk on people. Like,
I mean, we saw what Malrung did last year.
well, yeah, and Malrang was, within the context of LCK, not that strong, right? So Challengers, to me, is obviously, yeah, it's really important. I think it's in a great spot, like Wolf is saying. I think there's a lot of mobility for the players. You see so many players get picked up, although some of them, like Noah, could have also been utilized much better and not just leave us and go to, I think he's in the LFL now, I don't know, but that made me sad. That's just KT Classic. Lose Vikla, lose Noah, no problem. Could have been looking at a very different KT this
Noah had
this
so
play.
much potential as well when we saw him. Yeah.
That's the problem.
not
Like
talk
you
about
got to
it.
play behind aiming, but like maybe one day KT is like, I don't know how many times I can try to use aiming. It's expensive. Like, got to try your Challengers roster, right? I think that's the kind of economy thing I was talking about right now, where Nongshim is just like trash the whole thing. Like, we spent a lot of money last season. It went horribly wrong. Like, let's just develop some talent, right? And I think now is the time. Like, pay attention to these players. The best players will be rewarded. Absolutely, I think they really will.
Yep. All right, that's enough about the Challenger boys. Let's get into some predictions, shall we? As First week now in the books. Valdes and I, the only ones to bro leave in one instance. We believed different bro games that they were going to win.
Yeah.
We did not predict that bro were going to win twice in a row. Although I know everyone in Twitch chat definitely did.
I just believed in the bro of challengers, you know, Tsumi, which is Nongshim. which
I
shouldn't have
saw
done.
Nongshim's roster that they replaced their old, like the old challengers roster got promoted, got replaced by a new roster that seemed pretty good, and that just made me want to believe when I saw you guys commentate them in challengers. So I just kind of was like, nah. And Fred,
Yeah, because Nongshim won their first game, didn't they? Yeah. Of course.
yeah, it was maybe unwise, perhaps a bit premature. It might have been that the LCK production was asking me that night for my prediction, and I really just didn't know.
I just believed. Yeah.
You got a bro leave, guys.
You got a bro leave. That's
Fred-
actually
not Fredit.
Yeah,
Breon.
and I only 50% of the time did it.
Yeah, Breon is looking at this again. I'm like, why didn't I vote for them against Nongshim? I don't know. I should have bro leaved because I don't know. Like I think after what we've seen, especially like say what you want, they played against two weakish teams. I think they look even better than last year. I don't think they're gonna win LCK, but like I think they're looking pretty good to start spring.
I think
Morgan.
Effort not looking that bad.
Morgan
Like Effort
and Umpty.
Yeah. I think Umpty, the fact that they managed to keep him was absolutely huge. But Effort not like actually egregiously inting is huge. I think.
He played against Taeun and Moham, and Vidal and Peter.
Vital's pretty good.
Yeah, in team fights, not in laning. Neither is Peter. I know you. I know we all
his
love
flash
Peter.
grenade
I'm sorry, guys. I'm not a bro leaver. I'm a notorious.
No, we're not saying that they're good.
No,
we're
I know.
saying that they're better than these two teams. And we should have predicted
I'm probably gonna keep voting against them, and if it backfires, that's fine. To me, actually not against Nongshim and Kwangdong, but against any other team, I still think that their specific style of play should not work. Although, you know, after like looking at Halma today, I'm like, maybe the bros just fight him 5v5 and Halma just kind of runs it down. I
Maybe
don't
this
even
is
know.
their opportunity while everybody else is.
They did. That's how they won. How they got into playoff last spring as well, right? But I think that's the only big difference that we had this week.
I feel like when I watched Bro, both of those games, especially the first one, I really felt like some of the chaos that we've seen in the past was like, okay, 7 Drake game, we're going to Elder. Like a lot of that persisted. But I think part of the reason why they won some of those team fights, and obviously Morgan had that really cool Fiora split push to win the game, is because Morgan is making good calls. You can see he's calming a lot when you watch him on cam, and he's really like trying to control side lanes and playing it super well, even from behind. And Fredit are taking these crazy late game fights because, formerly Fredit. I got the Valdes look. I'm sorry, everyone. Breon are taking these really crazy fights later on, but they're able to survive until Elder because the side laning is so good. And that goes for Karis and for Morgan as well. So I'm a believer right now, a little bit. Like I think they will not make playoffs, but they will give us some quality games and entertaining games for
There's
sure.
only one true bro leaver. Maybe that we can segue.
That's okay. Yeah. So let's speaking of which, let us segue into the hashtag #BroMomento standings predictions. So what we've done is we've predicted what the standings are going to look like at the end of the spring split.
We're gonna look so
After
week
amazing.
After week 1, and this is like basically bringing from the very beginning of this episode the overreactions and placing it onto the table in front of us here in the form of this beautiful Excel spreadsheet graph.
Which I assume you guys can see.
Yeah, you can probably have access to it. We'll just we'll send the share link in the description. I was joking.
I never know with you, okay?
Because then we can
Make
see
sure to
all
share
the
the Google Doc,
circles.
yeah.
Yeah, like all the Google Sheets. Yeah, there we go.
Just not even trusting this guy's editing skills. I'm sorry for this guy.
Season 4, okay?
All right. So I'm going to have a look at this, and we'll have a look at where the discrepancies lie, shall we?
Yes.
Nongshim being 10th. No discrepancies
Yeah.
there.
I think the first three. I think the first. We can keep that out.
Kill this. I've got this slippery hump on, and it's just slipping out of the folds.
You can literally just tie it, like the clip goes
Just
onto
put it
your
on your
hands.
belt.
On that note,
top three we
stand
don't
up.
have to discuss, right?
Well, a little bit.
We do have to discuss the top three because there is a little bit of a change. This goes back to our previous conversation about D plus Kia versus T1 and Wolf's the Believer.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this is one part of the two overreactions I had, and I am believing in D plus Kia right now. And at this moment in time, before I submit predictions in the next 2 days, I'm leaning towards I'm probably going to predict them over T1, but I do think it is going to be very close. I'm like 51-49 D plus Kia, you know, but at this moment in time, because of what I said earlier, so I'll just say it one more time, I think because they are not the same team and they look this good already, they're going to be better than they are now, like massively, potentially. We have to remember the caliber of opponents they faced so far, but still, I think that the potential is there, and it's my crazy early prediction thing, and I'm just willing to put them on number one right now.
All right. The other thing we agree on is Genji a third place.
Everyone.
Everyone. Just collectively, Genji's third, Nongshim's 10th.
They just haven't looked as good as T1 or D+, and every other team has kind of let us down in one facet or another. So like, like Genji, you know, they lost to T1, but what are you gonna do, right? Like, I think they still have looked much better than everybody else. So like, better than Humble Life Esports, much better than KT, much better than DRX, you know. So I think it's a no-brainer to put them there at third. But after that, everything changes.
Everything is pure chaos.
Between 4 and 9.
So maybe
We have three different teams in fourth.
yeah.
I don't want to talk about mine. Can you guys talk about yours?
Well, the one I want to ask you about, Atlus, and maybe we should all ask each other the one where you're like, what's going on there? Let's do it. So,
We'll do
Atlus,
intervention style.
Atlus.
Okay, intervene me.
why is KT fourth in playoffs?
Well, one
They
would say
almost lost to Nongshim today. They lost a game to Nongshim.
They didn't though.
No, but they lost a game.
They did, but they didn't lose the series.
Because
Hey,
Nongshim-
Mr. Humble Life Esports, they lost to Live Sandbox today.
So they lost.
Okay, and you have them in fourth.
Yeah.
Sorry to break into the interview.
Yeah. So
I got
You have them there
I
as
got
well.
emotional, okay?
Yeah. So like.
Yeah,
the
so
same-
what?
The same logic does apply to Humble Life Esports that applies to KT, but I actually just think that KT look like they'll probably get it together better than Humble Life Esports.
Oh.
That's what I think. Because I think Cuz is better than Clid.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah. That's true.
That's a dark path to have that conversation. You know, that's a dark path we go down.
I don't want to open that can of worms.
Alice is like, anyway.
4-letter C junglers, man. You just don't know.
I
Thank God he's not Kona, you know.
None of us watched any LPL, right? But I've heard some rumors talking to the LPL people about Clid and FPX. And I think saying Cuz is better and will probably remain better is a fair statement. Because the things I heard were real bad.
Fun plus Phoenix.
Yeah. Okay, so that was the Atlus intervention. KT on fourth.
Yes.
You defended yourself admirably.
Why, thank you. I don't.
Also,
know
can we
whether I'll
ask
be
about
correct,
can we
but
ask
whatever.
about Kwangdong number 8? Can we? I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to stop it right here.
They're playing scrims.
Because Wolf has Kwangdong on fourth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the next intervention.
What do you think? What kind of scrim meta you think they're playing?
All right, look.
Taeyoon's gonna carry, right? Like, that must be.
I think based on what we've heard from June, who still was subbed out for some reason, which we don't understand.
It was a scrim.
It was a scrim. Also, Bulldog looks really good. Okay.
That is true. We're not arguing that.
And I'll be honest with you guys, me putting Kwangdong in fourth is because I really had to think really hard about who was going to be fifth and sixth and seventh. And I just be like, am I really going to put Hanwha in fourth? No. Am I going to put KT Rolster in fourth right now? Absolutely not. DRX? Hell no.
So everyone just fell on the
And then I was like, well, Bulldog seemed pretty good. Remember when I said on the broadcast when I was casting with you yesterday, Valdes, I was like, Bulldog, I can trust like that, you know? Like, and then I just kind of thought about that, and I was like,
The best thing is, especially looking back at past seasons, some of the it is gonna come true. Like we don't know yet. You never know in week 1.
These teams will achieve a placement in the LCK.
I actually think like it makes complete sense to me that out of seemingly nowhere, one of Nongshim, Sandbox, Kwangdong, or Bro is actually going to be like a playoff soon, and it's going to knock out any of Hanwha Life, DRX, KT, for sure. Yeah, I'm actually like, that is what happened so many times in times past as well, right? So I can't wait. So okay, I've been casting, I've been throwing stones. Hit me.
All right, I think yours is kind of boring, I'm not going to lie. But Bro being in 9th bothers me a lot.
Yeah,
that
same,
goes for you
same.
too. But I
in
think...
9th?
He wasn't anti-bro this week, to be fair.
Yeah, he's
I mean,
hashtag anti.
I'm okay. Hear me out.
He's a bro anti.
With Bro, I think the ceiling of this team is just very, very low. And I think them beating up on 2 basically challenger teams in the first week when their core hasn't changed at all doesn't really tell me anything. I think they were able to get playoffs last time around. And that was magical and took a lot of circumstances and miracles for that to actually come to fruition. I firmly believe, I don't know if it will be Sandbox or Kwangdong or Nongshim, that, well, one of those teams will be worse, the other 2 will be better. I think those teams actually have a very natural growth curve ahead of them. I think that they either have individual players like Bulldog or a cohesive identity, like Sandbox, as I expect them to keep developing. Or Kwangdong, don't know who is actually going to be successful. But to me, Bro, if Bro is higher up, I think that's not a great sign for the LCK. I think they play extremely slow. I love the team. And I don't give me that face.
It's okay to be a bro anti.
Yeah, I
Weird.
the reason, like, Bro and Nongshim to me.
You just won't have any friends. I don't like you.
The reasoning to me is the same for both Bro and Nongshim. I love both of these teams, but I don't think that as other teams develop through spring, they should be able to stand up.
All right, Valdes.
I mean, I'm also, well,
Bro in playoffs is a good
I was just going to say, I mean, I think that I would have put Bro at 8, but Leaf Sandbox were pretty good today, so I just wanted to give them a little nudge, and I think there's a lot of growth potentially to be there at Leaf Sandbox. I think Breon has mostly stayed the same, except like Karis joined the roster, who he's had quite a bit of time to develop as a player, and it hasn't worked out. I feel like even Lava, I would put it in a stronger place, and like I feel like Karis is kind of a downgrade. So
Also support.
Yeah,
Losing Delight is huge.
Yeah, losing Delight for
That
for
actually
sure.
to me is a large reason of why.
They did get former T1 support effort, okay.
Want to talk about effort?
Former Nongshim support.
Wait, was he on Nongshim? I didn't watch those games.
He was gone for a while, but and for Peter, yeah.
He's been playing from his bedroom, man. Give him a break.
All right, wait, you were gonna go on the next interrogation. I'll do the one after
Is it
that.
about Bro?
Yeah, I just wanted you to give us some wisdom as to why Bro deserves 6.
No, I mean, you guys are talking about growth, but the thing is that a lot of growth in the LCK happens at the end of spring / beginning of summer. So like, Bro, they have 2 of their biggest pieces, Morgan and Umpty, still together. They have a workable mid lane. The bottom lane, I don't know because, you know, for now they've been allowed to just literally play Lucian Nami every single game against weaker opponents. That's not going to happen against better teams. So that's a big question mark. That's kind of like, I hope that the meta changes so that like the top side of the map is more important, because their top side of the map is pretty good and they have really good synergy already. I think they're good enough, and some of these teams are going to need more time. Like I have like Kwangdong and KT and I thought you were going to ask me about KT.
I mean, KT's like that. I don't want to, because I don't want you to force me to do the E-word stuff. You know?
Yeah.
We already went over why you put KT.
I know.
So you guys, so hold on, just I just want to check. I make sure this is correct on the paper.
I was gonna make.
So about Bro.
No, I think that it's hilarious, and I think Wolf was just about to get into it, but this entire episode we have just not talked about DRX at all.
Well, I was getting that because I thought maybe there might be a mistake where
Guys,
both
I
Valdes.
forgot that DRX was even in the like I had to put them in afterwards. I'm like, oh, what is DRX?
Well, as it turns out, they're not the same team that won Worlds, so it's very hard to like get your head around that. And I've seen a lot of fans as well being like, "What? DRX won Worlds and they play like this?" I'm like, "You guys are not even looking at nameplates." But you guys weren't looking at looking at the gameplay today. If you put Hanwha in 4th, DRX in 5th, both of you over here.
Hanwha just needs some time. Hanwha just needs some time. Okay, like they're a great team.
So
they have sick players.
Well, let's hear some details. You know.
You can talk about DRX. I don't know.
So for,
That one slipped in.
for
I
DRX,
moment of.
I
yeah.
love chaos. That's it. And they have the most chaotic players. They have Beryl and Croco, both of which so far have looked absolutely atrocious. So the only thing that makes sense to me is that team is going to pull it together.
They're on the chaotic alliance.
Yes. Yeah, they are. because DRX
They added the ZX.
It was supposed to be like chaotic evil, but they just forgot evil existed, so they just do chaotic again.
They've gone off the map.
the one thing to me that hinges on this though, and that is something that I think me and Valdes might still err on and might come back to really bite us, is assuming that Fate is going to be good.
Yeah,
That's
do
the,
that.
well, okay, and that's fair. But I think just as you guys talked about, you know, like what is the developmental curve going to be? I'm taking the gamble here that Fate and Croco revert to 2021, where they were actually also a game away from making playoffs, right? And I think that this is the type of roster, especially because of the players, where I'm like, I can see them be absolute garbage for the first 3 weeks and then start stomping people, right? To me, they're really. This is kind of gambling on them really getting it together, and I think once they get it together, they will be a top-tier middle-of-the-pack team. They won't be starting. Maybe they'll have like good series. Maybe they'll get like an upset against D+ or T1 at some point, right? But like that's not my expectation. But to me, it makes complete sense for this team to. This is just the gamble, you know. And DRX, as far as teams to gamble on, I think the payoff will be huge because on theory, right? Like Fate, super stable mid laner, doesn't really lose. Always a brick wall that can be there. Well, I mean, obviously right now he doesn't do that. Croco, when his initiation sense is synced with the rest of his team, we know he has like some of the best initiation sense in the league. But right now it's not synced, so he goes in and let's try to pull off these crazy early ganks and it sucks and nothing happens. Rascal, self-explanatory. And Dogdown and Barrel, I think also self-explanatory. Like Barrel flashing and dying level 2 is peak Spring Barrel. So I'm taking a gamble.
I want to just put it out there since I was on the asked, I guess, and I have DRX in 7th right now, not making playoffs. I don't trust Fate. Like, I feel like he's past his peak, and I think that I was one of the biggest Fate championers. Like, I was like, okay, Fate is like really, really good. Like, he's just he's really good. His Syndra's amazing. 2021, Syndra's back. Jury's still on how amazing it is this time around. For me, it's always been like these kind of strange, high potential mid laners I'm always super excited about, and then they disappoint me. Like Lava. You guys know I was like on the Lava hype train. Like this is gonna be it.
Yeah, you were the crazy bro lever at the start of last year. Where's that energy now, dude? Where we need it most.
I'm still a bro lever. I'm just not an anti. I put him at 9. I'm just not an anti.
I'm not an anti. You have him in the same place as
He's an anti. It's fine.
It's too late.
It's fine, but it's pretty weird.
I put him in the top 9. I put top 9 teams in the LCK.
You put him bottom 2. I put him top 9. But I also feel like Rascal, this should be his meta, and so I want to say I'm hopeful that will, continue to be a good thing, because that is seemingly the best part of this team right now, and I'm just not ready. I'm just not ready to believe.
Listen, Beryl just needs a little bit of time to start playing League of Legends again, so just give him some time to get unaddicted to Genshin, and he'll be back, okay? Just need a little bit of time.
Beryl did not go on a trip with his team after they won the World Championship.
He didn't go to the Grand Canyon.
He didn't go to the He didn't celebrate after winning Worlds because he wanted to go back and play gacha games.
Yeah. Well, to be perfectly honest, Nahida just released and she's super broken.
Yeah, which
True.
no one besides you and Beryl makes any sense as a reason as why you wouldn't celebrate with your team after winning Worlds. So
I mean, he absolutely should have celebrated with his team.
we're all taking some gambles, you know. Valdes is a bro playoff believer, Atlus has hitched his card to KT, which interesting choice.
No, I didn't. I just think
He's a long time LCK. Right?
So I did it. I tried to use as much logic brain as I could. Right. I tried to use as much logic brain, and I was like, can I feel okay? It was kind of like Wolf with his Kwangdong are like somehow in fourth, you know? And I did it, and I'm like, well, Hama Life Esports, there is no way they're in my top 4 after today. They lost to Live Sandbox, and if you were watching the start of the show, that team sucks a lot. They're not good, even a little bit.
I mean, they looked better today, but yeah, I mean...
They looked better today, but I thought that they didn't look very good at all. And so Hama Life Esports losing to them, I think was more on Hama Life Esports being bad on the day.
Can't wait to look back.
I know, I'm
At
looking
the end
forward
of
to it
spring.
too.
I'm already, it's like, you know, when you
I know,
when
we're
you
gonna
know
feel
it's
so
your birthday.
stupid when KT is first,
Yeah.
you know?
when it's your birthday, you're like,
Plus,
oh,
we're
I know I'm,
fifth. We're like, whoa, what happened to that team?
oh, I'm getting a great gift. And like, you're already looking forward to it weeks in advance. That's me. I'm like, we're going to look, I don't know, some of us are going to look like a genius, some of us are going to look dumb. I hope that Genji is actually third, just to keep that in place.
I'm like looking at Valdes' predictions and I'm like, I want that to happen. I kind of just, I want that to be the future. Not KT being an 8,
KT
that's a
in
bit
8th as
sad.
well.
That makes me sad, but...
I think top five, yeah. The top 5 of Valdes is, I'm like, yeah.
For like yours, if KT and DRX were swapped, I'd be really happy.
If I could change it, I would actually, I'm going to go with Wolf. I would put Kwangdong over KT. I'm like, that's the type of future that I want.
I did that as well. Just in 7th and 8th.
The CV Max sneaking into scrim playoffs?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, if they actually play June and they, play around their really good mid laner and don't put them on Karma.
Yeah. I mean, that's if they don't spend half the season playing with their challenger roster because it's a scrim, you know? You may as well experiment.
Remember when Danny didn't say it was a scrim roster for T1, but it really was? And then they found the answer, and then they like went to every finals after that, pretty much. Like, just saying, like, buying early on the Kwangdong potential here.
But Wolf, sorry, but we're not predicting 2024 spring. This is 2023 spring.
Look, I can't predict Hanwha, KT, DRX, Live Sandbox Pro, and Ongshim in those spots. They just have to be below. And I'm not trying to say Quantum is the 4th best team, but they said I couldn't leave it empty. Like, I can't leave it empty, right? There will be a team in 4th place. I just had to like do game theory and figure out which one seemed to be the least offensive to me at this moment in time.
The best part about this is as well is that like we made these predictions an hour before the show, like after a 5 or 6 day work week.
Yeah,
and after a 6-game day, and with the knowledge that tomorrow Challengers is waiting for us again. So everyone is losing it.
But actually, I really like these lists, and I'm really looking forward to going back to them at the end of the season as well. And that's only in a few weeks' time. But I think it's time for us to go to bed because we've got an early morning. At least Wolf and Valdes definitely do.
What do you don't pretend that we also have a tough time with the day off tomorrow.
No, we don't. Yeah.
You
don't
guys
have a
did
tough day at
past
all.
6 games of
But we
today.
we did do today. That did exist.
I think that's worse.
Live Sandbox won and my Challenger team won a game. I am.
But it had to go through what happened today,
Yeah,
so...
Valdes is looking forward to a challenger day for the upgrade in League of Legends quality.
It's going to get better from here on out, so...
All I ask for, that's actually, I want to end on that note, is that I never have to cast a game like that first Live Sandbox game again.
Yeah.
Because that was... And I didn't have to
Coming
be
from a
vague.
huge Live Sandbox fan.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I still am. The jury's still out on
He's
that.
a Live Sandbox anti.
But...
That team's bottom two. All right, thank you so much for watching. Make sure that if you have any considerations about our predictions, you can leave them in the comments below, and we do read those. I spend a lot of time scrolling, so if you want to go down and leave your predictions, that would be fantastic. Follow us on Twitter at POGState if you want to know when all of the future episodes are live. But for now, we're going to go home, we're going to go to bed, and we're going to wake up and commentate more League of Legends. See you then.
That was like the best episode of POG State ever.